All right, and we are back, everyone. Welcome to a Monday edition of Lunch with Lincoln. I want to welcome Tara Setmayer, my guest for today. And Tara, as you all know, is a senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, chaired our transition committee, and is, of course, host of The Breakdown on Tuesday and Thursday nights at 8 Eastern with Rick Wilson. And so, Tara, thanks for joining me today.
Of course. Happy Monday, Reed.
Happy Monday. So we're going to take some questions from you, the viewers, and thank you for sending those in. But before we do that, Tara, I want to go over a couple of current events things with you. So first, we've seen now that, Fox News is, I don't know how many times you can double down, triple down, quadruple down on pushing disinformation vis-a-vis vaccinations. At least Laura Ingraham was doing it again last night. At what point does political ideology just go straight to like death cult? And I know that Fox has millions of viewers. I get it. But do you think that they are willing to literally sacrifice the lives of people watching because it pushes some agenda, especially given the fact that they're all freaking vaccinated? No one on the air there is not vaccinated.
Right. That's exactly right. First of all, I think we've crossed that Rubicon a long time ago, right? Mm-hmm. Fox has already demonstrated that they really have no regard for the well-being of our democracy, the well-being of their own viewers. And, Lincoln Project put out an ad against Rupert Murdoch, demonstrating how dangerous he is with his media properties and what they've perpetuated. We would not have Donald Trump as president if it weren't for Fox News and the right-wing ecosystem. They're the ones, if Fox News had made the decision back in 2015 or 2016 to say that Donald Trump is not a serious person, this guy is, full of it, there would be no Donald Trump as president. But they saw that this was an incredible opportunity to make a lot of money and to control the narrative. If you want to look at what state-run propaganda TV looks like and how powerful it can be when you manipulate information and you can manipulate behavior of millions of people, Fox News is a case study in that. So yeah, they don't care. They don't care if it kills people. It is death cult territory. 3 years ago at 3 years ago tomorrow, I was a guest host on The View, and I had a really spirited exchange with Miss Meghan McCain when I called the cult of personality that was Donald Trump a cult. I was like, this is cultish behavior. Right. She took issue with that. I didn't care. I was like, too bad. It's true. I believe that wholeheartedly. Right. And here we are 3 years later, and it's now a death cult.
Right. And so let me ask you this, because, there's also the Facebook component of this, which is, as he was leaving for the weekend on Friday, President Biden said that Facebook is killing people. Facebook took issue with this, fired back a statement that in the true spirit of sort of all the president's men, right, was sort of a non-denial denial. They didn't deny they were killing people. They just didn't say they were. They didn't admit it. And do you remember a time when, with all of the craziness of Trump in office, and even today, now that he's quote unquote off their platforms, where Facebook fired back at Donald Trump or the Trump administration as toughly and as harshly as they did at the Biden administration in this context?
Hell no, because Facebook was complicit in a lot of what happened in 2016. It feels like eons ago. It feels like it was like 20 years ago. But the whole 2016 Cambridge Analytica data mining thing that was going on, where Facebook was complicit, and then when they got called out on it and it was discovered, they were like, oh, well, we kind of didn't know. This was all new to us, and how we want to do better, and bullshit. Jared Kushner was talking to Mark Zuckerberg often. Steve Bannon and those guys were in conversations with Facebook, and it was a mutually beneficial relationship for them. You have millions of these people who are Trump supporters on the platform. It's a moneymaker for them. And it took a violent insurrection for them to finally actually do something about it. So, and what are they actually doing? Well, they kicked Trump off, okay, but there's still this whole idea that this, misinformation and disinformation is being spread through Facebook, with reckless abandon. So I understand. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this a little bit. And this is the conservative in me that gets concerned when the government starts making those kinds of comments.
Sure.
I understand the criticism when it comes from Joe Biden. as the president of the United States, making a comment like that about a private company. I can see the slippery slope arguments here where then, do you want government action against them? What do you want to do? Do you want the speech police? We have to be careful with that. But colloquially, yes, we can say that Facebook giving platform to these things and not weeding it out, or at least putting warning labels or something on that kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a certain responsibility. Same thing with Fox. We can say Fox News is killing people too.
Right.
Now, people actually, that's just colloquial. People are responsible for their own behaviors. Let's be clear about that. But if you're fed misinformation over and over again, you're making misinformed decisions.
Right.
And they're well aware. They're fully aware of this too. These are very smart people, very business savvy people. This is all about the bottom line.
So, I was thinking about this. Is that last year when we put out our ad, "Morning in America," that sort of helped us get to prominence. Facebook flagged it as inaccurate. They said that the line in the ad that Trump cared more about Wall Street than Main Street was factually inaccurate, even though we had backup for it. And we have lots of friends that work at Facebook, and we called and we said, you got to get this flag taken off. This is BS. And they said, the fact checker said it is what it is. We can't do anything about it. And I said, but you've got thousands, if not tens of thousands of Facebook groups churning this stuff, QAnon and everything, hydrochloroquine at the time and all this other crap through your pipes. And we're the ones who said this. And they're like, yeah, not a lot we can do about it. Yeah. There is something they can do about it. They just don't want to.
That's right. And then, they formed this board, right? This oversight board with all these smart people and thought leaders in different walks of life that are supposed to be coming together at this meeting of the minds to make these determinations. And, I think that's in theory, it looks like a very judicious kind of solution to litigating these types of things. So it's not just one or two people. It's kind of a meeting of the minds committee thing. And they voted to kick the can down the road about Trump, whether to permanently suspend him or not. And so it's clear that they're trying to do something, but what that something is and how enforceable it is and how the discretionary part of it is still, I think, in question.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend all 30 minutes we have together on Facebook. I should note that the authors of the new book about Facebook will be on We're Speaking this week, Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So you get your fill of Facebook there with Lisa and Maya. So there was a question from the live audience about what we see as a problem with a company like AT&T. And so AT&T is, here's the question. Are you going to go after AT&T for donating to people like Greg Abbott? We misspelled Greg, but we'll get over that, who are trying to restrict voting rights? Yes, is the answer. And in fact, we're going to do that this week. And so stay tuned. I think that, AT&T, and in full disclosure, I did work for AT&T many moons ago. I think almost any public affairs consultant in the country will eventually do work for AT&T. But you have to understand too that they have not only nationally at the federal level, but also state by state, probably among the most sophisticated government affairs, public policy, and political operations going.
Yeah. Telecom, a lot of the telecom companies do, because their reach has gotten so far that it's not just, we think of AT&T and it's like, phone bills and your cell phone, but AT&T is a huge conglomerate that owns lots of different media properties, including CNN.
Right. Yes.
Who I worked for many years.
Right. And, I believe they own, do they own DirecTV? If they do, I think they own DirecTV as well.
It's all under that umbrella. HBO, all that. Time Warner now has all been, and that was something that the Trump administration tried to stop, that merger.
Right. And I think they're spinning that off because they realize that they're not, they're the, POTS, right? They're plain old telephone service. That's really probably their thing. And to your point about the legacy piece, remember that AT&T was a monopoly. It was broken up, right? And then it's sort of come back together piece by piece, but all these pieces still have their own way of going. The bottom line here is, guys, is that, I believe that the day that Greg Abbott called the special session in the Texas legislature to discuss bringing back these voter restriction laws, AT&T's PAC donated $100,000 to his reelection campaign. They're based in Dallas. Again,
That's why.
they have a lot of equities, literally and figuratively, not only in Texas, but places like California and certainly Washington, D.C. So yeah, expect that you'll see some stuff from us here coming not only later today, I think, but also throughout the week. And we will continue to highlight those companies. I saw our good friend Judd Legum announced or revealed today that Lockheed Martin, one of the country's biggest defense contractors, has now started giving back to the 147 members of Congress that voted against certifying the election on January 6th. And so, guys, just remember that for them, this is all transactional. They don't see the world the way we see it, Tara. They see it as like this is just business as usual, but it's not.
That's right. And I mean, we all knew that when these companies made these pledges back after the insurrection in January, that it would only last for so long, because money talks in politics. And these companies, their entire existence is based around what politicians in Washington do or don't do for their industries, particularly ones like Lockheed and others who are so dependent on Boeing, right? They're so dependent on government contracts. Like, these are billions and billions of dollars worth of contracts. So they have to make strategic decisions about the health of their own organizations, and democracy be damned. Well, this is just a phase, and we'll try to forget that. That was an unfortunate, unpleasant event, that love fest, as Trump calls it. Right. People will forget about this eventually, and then we'll be able to start feeding the pipeline to our friends in Washington again, the money pipeline, and maybe no one will notice. But it's clear that people are still noticing, and they have to be held to account for it. They should not be giving any money to anyone that participated in, justified, whitewashed, aided and abetted, rationalizes anything concerning the January 6th insurrection. I mean, it's literally you can't get any more anti-American than that. And yet, they're making excuses, right?
Yeah, and it reminds me of in 1961, then President Dwight Eisenhower gave his final speech from the Oval Office as he was leaving before John Kennedy took over. And he warned of the creeping influence of the military-industrial complex.
Right, that's right.
Now, this was a man who had not only been president for 8 years at the beginning of the Cold War, but had also managed the greatest coalition army in the history of humankind, and certainly knew of what he was speaking.
Yes.
And now I think these are sort of the fruits of his warning, right? Is that, to your point, it's the reason why Boeing and Lockheed and a lot of these other companies make sure that they either have some screw or some nut or some bolt or some office in all 435 congressional districts, right?
Yes.
To make sure that there's no place that they're not represented, that they're not saying we're responsible for one of these jobs here that you don't want to be, held accountable for getting rid of.
Right. And I mean, and then the upside of it is that they also do provide a lot of economic benefit to some of these districts. I mean, some of these places where their factories are, where things are made, or, their testing facilities, they employ lots of people with good paying jobs. So, it's not all bad, but it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be at the expense, though, of the health of our democracy, because if the democracy falls, none of this matters.
Right. So, Tara, I want to shift gears to something that you're an expert on, which is Capitol Hill. So last week, about 50 Democratic members of the Texas House of Representatives flew to Washington, D.C., first to break the quorum down in Austin so that no one can vote on these election bills, but also to come and directly pressure members of the Democratic Congress to pass voting rights legislation. The House, all you need is a simple majority. I believe they've already passed, if not one, maybe a couple of different bills. Now the pressure is on the Senate. Do you believe that Chuck Schumer and the Democratic leadership in the U.S. Senate, in the face of these legislators, in the face of President Biden's speech last week about democracy, do you think they'll bring something to the floor? Do you think they'll break the filibuster to do it? Or do you think this is one of those things, candidly, that they're hoping, we got a lot of things we want to get done. We still see this as a policy institution, not a political institution. And so if we get infrastructure done, we'll call it a day. And that's what we're going to run on next year.
Yeah, I this is problematic for a number of reasons, because the way the Senate works is really not, it's not normal. The
Right.
Senate has these Byzantine rules and all kinds of different parliamentary procedures and maneuvers and political brinkmanship that I think the Democrats are not equipped to utilize properly. Republicans are masters at this. However you feel about Mitch McConnell,
Right.
he understands how to rule the Senate, and how to use all the rules to their advantage. And Democrats just haven't demonstrated the political will to do that yet. Now, some of the tactics that Republicans used, that's kind of how we got to where we are with the Supreme Court and justices, where they use the nuclear option to change the Senate rules in order to just get a simple majority for federal judges and Supreme Court nominees. Democrats started that with regular federal judges, and then Republicans said, oh, we're going to take it one step further, and we're going to do this for Supreme Court nominees. And
Right.
people were aghast at that, right? Well, it's kind of laid the foundation for this argument over whether they should change the filibuster rule to get civil rights legislation passed. And I'm torn about this, because I know what happens when the shoe's on the other foot. That the filibuster is something that is a stopgap measure, and I understand the positions of Manchin and Sinema on why they're so resistant to changing it for this, because it doesn't stop there. You can make the exception for just this, and then, but it doesn't stop there. Same thing with reconciliation. Right. They did the same thing. They used a Byzantine, ruled kind of, very complicated thing with reconciliation to get other things passed back in the day. And now it's out of control. They're using it for everything. And that was not the intent. So people who are statesmen in the Senate, or who are institutionalists, and Joe Biden is one of them. I mean, he spent forever in the Senate. He understands it too, which is why he's not so gung-ho on this whole filibuster talk. They understand that there are reasons why these things are in place. And, for good or for bad, I know people feel like this is really important, and it is. But then what happens when it's the next thing that's not as crucial and as important as this? And then they start passing all kinds of things that are way worse. So will they do it? I don't know. I don't think that we're going to see major civil rights legislation passed out of the Senate, given the other political wins they think they're going to run on, like, an infrastructure bill where it's a tangible accomplishment, where they can go back to their districts and say, we got this amount of money and we're creating these amount of jobs and we're going to rebuild our roads and bridges. And those are tangible things they can run on, versus the esoteric concepts of freedom, democracy, and voting rights. I mean, it's important. It's hugely important. We get that. But the average American doesn't study this stuff the way that we do, and they don't internalize it because it's not a kitchen table issue for them directly.
But isn't that the definition of leadership, though?
Yeah, I know. But we're talking about political reality. Yeah. Unfortunately, political reality is not always the reality that we want it to be. And, Democrats need to learn how to use the system to their advantage for things that are really important. And I'm not sure that they're doing that. Their messaging is god awful on this. Everything should go back to, we had an insurrection, a violent one on January 6th. All these other things don't matter if the democracy falls. And this is why it should be a kitchen table issue for you. It should be for the millions of people who will fall victim to voter suppression, right? But they're not. They're just bad at the messaging of it. Republicans are so much better at this, even if it's bullshit and even if it's not true. But they message the hell out of things, keep it simple, they cater to the emotion of people, whether it's fear or whatever. Not the good things, the lowest common denominators, but the concept is right. Democrats still haven't figured out how to do that. They're still arguing policy papers, and that doesn't resonate with people.
So I was talking to a friend of mine who works in Europe, and he works in a European country, and he's a center right guy. And he said, we have a party like your Democratic Party here. And he said, we have this joke we tell. He said, your party is left on a desert island, and you are given two choices of what you can eat forever. You must choose chicken or fish. And you know what happens? They starve to death because they're afraid of what people will think of their choice. Like, that is the Democratic Party, unfortunately.
Democrats. That's true. Rick and I talk about this all the time on the breakdown. The Democrats are too busy focus grouping and polling to get the answer, as opposed to going with the gut raw emotion instinct of what resonates with people. They're too busy trying to please everyone. And that, that doesn't work. It doesn't work.
There's the pleasing part, but the flip side of the pleasing part is the defense part, which is they're trying not to lose as opposed to trying to win. And
Correct.
so if you run 82 gajillion algorithms through Facebook or spend $2 million on polling or $5 million on focus groups or whatever, and you come up with this thing that's probably pretty crappy, to be honest with you, because it's been so watered down by all the different opinions, you can always go and say, well, it didn't work, but look, it was supposed to.
Right.
The numbers said it should work.
Right.
And this is just after, a bunch of pollsters, I think in the Washington Post this morning said, we can't figure out why we got the 2020 numbers so wrong. We can't figure it out. Well, yeah,
two election cycles in a row, right, Reed? 2016, they blew that something terribly. And then 2020 again, they didn't learn anything.
So look, so for folks watching, let me explain to you how I can't speak for, consumer surveys, but political polls, even to this day, it's usually 75% of the pollster calling people's home phone lines, right? A hardwired phone on the wall, and 25% of these things. So what you're saying is that 3/4 of the people you are calling, right, are already self-selected because they still have a home phone line.
Right, that's right.
And then they are choosing to spend 36 minutes on the phone with a stranger to talk about their political opinions. Now, how many people do you think normal human beings are willing to do that? Yeah. My guess are people who already have strong opinions and who don't have a lot else to do. And,
and that's not reflective of most of the country.
Right. And so, and also maybe
the strong opinions, but
right.
but people have other stuff to do.
Right. They have other things to do because they're normal human beings, right? They don't sit around and be like, oh, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to talk to a very nice person in a call center in Oklahoma City for the next 42 minutes. Like, that's just not how they spend their time.
Landlines. I haven't had a hard landline that I answer. I keep it for my fax machine. Mm-hmm. Yes, we still fax things occasionally, but I haven't talked on a hardline phone in years, and I'm 45. So, most of the demographic for people that have hard lines that are answering them are like 65 plus.
Right. I'm also 45 and I have not had a hardline phone in any home I've lived in since 1999.
Oh, wow.
Right. So just not something we've ever had to do. Yeah. And so just to give folks a little bit of sort of behind the scenes of how this stuff works, these numbers are wrong because you're also asking people to answer A, B, C, D. They're going to give you an answer. Do you feel like this? Do you feel like this? Do you feel strongly like this? Do you feel strongly like that? And then we'll do some things that are called verbatims where you'll actually take, what do you think about this? But those are on the whole, the rare exception because people could say all sorts of different things. It takes a lot of you have to sit there and code it and type it out and figure out how it fits into all this other stuff. And so it just takes too long.
People are afraid to give honest answers too. There's that whole thing about pleasing the caller. Like, you don't want to be completely honest because you want to give them the answer you think they want to hear. Right. Like, there's a lot that goes into the imprecise science of polling and social behavior and why, the way you ask questions. There's a whole lot involved. And because of the digital age, because of the way people get information now, polling traditionally the way we used to see it done, it's not keeping up with the times and with people's change in social behavior because of the way they get information. So there's a lot wrong with polling. So we can't, it's not completely accurate. And how they make those adjustments, that's up to the social scientists who do polling.
Well, and also, here's the thing is that if you are polling on a campaign, candidate A versus candidate B, and you're the pollster for candidate A, and you're off by 5%, like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's a lot.
It was, I said this the other day. It's like you tried to hit the dartboard and you threw it out the door instead. Like,
right.
These are not these. So like these things do matter on the margins, as we talked about. All the margins matter here, right? All these things are going to come down to, relatively speaking, small numbers.
Yeah.
So Tara, we've got 5 minutes left. So next week, the House Select Committee on January 6th is going to have its first hearings. It's going to have the police officers testify first, which I think is an interesting move. I think it's an emotional grab and a pretty smart one. We'll see that Yeah, they're learning. Kevin McCarthy has put someone like a Jim Jordan on, and Elise Stefanik and a couple other guys I don't know, but we'll make them famous before long. What are you expecting a week out? What are you expecting to see in those first couple days?
So this is appointment television,
Mhm.
or appointment internet viewing.
Streaming,
Yes, streaming.
appointment streaming.
I know, dating myself here, because this is something that Fox News and those folks cannot deny when it's out there. I mean, they don't have to cover it necessarily,
Right.
but it's difficult to avoid because now it'll be covered by everyone. Major networks, local newspapers. So that's the benefit of having this select committee, and Democrats starting off with these folks. These were the people who were on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the Hill when Benghazi was a thing. When Benghazi happened, when Republicans beat that drum, and and I've said this often, there were legitimate questions about how that was handled. However, the way that Republicans did it, they brought up Benghazi and branded Hillary Clinton with this. They put this albatross around her neck for years leading up to 2016. I can remember sitting in my congressional office with my fellow Hill staffers watching the hearings. And when she said, "What difference does it make?" during one of those hearings, I said, that's going to be a campaign commercial when she runs in 2016.
Right.
Because we knew that this was what Republicans were doing. Did they care to get to the bottom of Benghazi? Sure, there were legitimate questions there. Was this a bigger overall political strategy to put this albatross around her neck so they could beat that drum to death and brand her with this? Yes.
Yeah, McCarthy admitted it even back then.
Of course, that's right. So Democrats need to look at how Republicans did that. As untoward as they might thought it was effective. The whole emails thing, by the way, if people forget, came out of the Benghazi investigation. Mm-hmm. It was because they were looking at different things and so subpoenaing things, and they found the server and the whole email thing that was out of it. That was because of Benghazi. So I really hope that the Democrats are smart about the way that they handle the select committee. I think starting off with the police officers is a smart move because it does grab you right away, and it's undeniable. People respect law enforcement officers, and what happened to them that day is unfreaking deniable. Sure. I don't give a damn how many times Tucker Carlson and the Fox News propagandist BSers out there try to tell you that this was not as bad, or try to whitewash it into gaslighting people into thinking that, oh, the media exaggerated this, or Trump running around saying it was a love fest and people were hugging and kissing. Tourists. As freaking asinine as that is, the video is undeniable. And these officers and what they experienced in the front lines, their testimony will be compelling and powerful and undeniable. So this is a good start for this. And hopefully they'll keep up that intensity. Did McCarthy name the people to the panel yet?
Yeah, it was 4 of them. I was and
we'll get it. This weekend, so I didn't see it.
It's Elise Stefanik, Jim Jordan,
of course,
and then 2 others who I'd never heard of, but I assume are crazy, and so we should assume that there'll be a lot of harumphing and carrying on, especially from Jim Jordan.
Well, we saw this during the impeachment hearing, impeachment number 1. That's where Elise Stefanik made the decision to sell her soul to get to where she is now, to be a sycophant for Donald Trump, and now she's in Republican leadership. And we saw how they behaved, and they're not interested in getting to the truth. They're interested in, creating diversionary tactics, which is very unfortunate. Sure. I just hope that the Democrats shut them down when they start that shit, because unfortunately during the impeachment hearings, they didn't handle the first time around. It wasn't handled well in the Judiciary Committee.
Well, and just remember that Representative Liz Cheney from Wyoming will also be on that committee, named by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And there was a story out of one of these books that are all just coming hot and heavy now that I think it was Jim Jordan said, we have to get the ladies out of the aisle during the course of the insurrection. And Liz Cheney was like, take your hands off of me, you blanking caused this.
That's right. So, you effing caused this.
You effing caused this.
However you feel about Liz Cheney, she's got balls, and I respect that.
Yeah. So, well, listen, we will be talking more about that as the week goes on. And remember, everybody, to tune in to Tara and Rick tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, for the breakdown. Until then, Tara, thanks for joining me. It's been a great half an hour. It always goes quicker than I hope it will. And guys,
Sure.
thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on Friday.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your questions.
Bye, guys.